Okay, well, welcome everybody. There is a handout for this presentation. I don't know, just in case you don't have it, let me go to my closing slide. That's a place you can get it, that tiny URL. Might be quicker for you to use that than to worry about putting things in the chat. And that'll be the final screen on the presentation too. I'll assume everybody got that, who wants it.
Let me just type it into the chat
Okay.
real quick.
Okay.
Live.
Yep.
And see if I can make that live. There it is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, and I've asked Chris to monitor the chat for questions. If there are questions that are of the sort, I didn't understand what you just did, and I've given you enough time to move past it. I'm not going to ask about the next thing you were going to say. But if you didn't understand something that I was trying to get across to you, I'd like those questions at the time. Others I'd like to reserve for a question and answer period at the end. Airtable, I tend to think that if I'm teaching a subject, especially if it's about technology, that part of my job is to unintimidate the terminology. But in this case, I'm just going to tell you Airtable is an online interactive visual relational database app. And by the end of the talk, you'll understand what each of those words is doing and what it means. So I'm not going to try to define that further right now. You'll note similarities to spreadsheets, but it's much more powerful. I tell you where it is, but I also tell you where it is in the handout. It's a free app, although you can, as is the case with many of these apps, you can pay extra for additional features. And I will tell you during the talk 2 reasons why you might consider doing that in the case of Airtable. Yes, Airtable. But the free version will do almost everything I'm going to show you. And if there's anything I show you that I think it won't do, I'll tell you. What my intention is with the presentation is to tell you about Airtable, explain what a table is. That's the unit of content in Airtable. Show you what you can do with a table, teach you how to create and modify tables, and the other command functions of Airtable. Show you how to connect tables, which is where the real power is, and show you ways that enables a support system for managing genealogical research. No two people would do that kind of a support system in the same way. My way may not work exactly for you, but it'll give you ideas and show you why you might think of Airtable as a powerful tool for your toolkit. I'm assuming everybody has at least a passing familiarity with spreadsheets. That's a pretty basic skill these days. But just as a reminder about the terminology and structure, a spreadsheet file, like an Excel file, is the kind of outer wrapper for a set of spreadsheets, each of which is an array of rows, and that's what they're called, columns, and that's what they're called, and where a row and a column intersect, that's a cell where information is stored. I'm going to show you now the structure of Airtable. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to see if you can spot any similarities. Airtable uses different terminology, but the structure, and in particular the visual structure when you're using it, is the same. Airtable calls it a base. That's their short term for database. The containing unit within Airtable for everything is a table. And instead of rows, there are records. Instead of columns, there are fields. Now you might ask why Airtable found it necessary to change the terminology. They didn't. This has been the standard terminology in the database field since way before there were spreadsheets. It's the spreadsheet folks who wanted to use the visual similarity with paper accounting spreadsheets who changed the terminology. So I'm going to show you Airtable now. I was just checking ahead to make sure that was really the next thing I needed to do. Here, this is Airtable. I'm assuming everybody is seeing my screen now. Everything, this purple to green line, everything that's above that is from my browser. So just ignore that. Everything that's below that is Airtable. And what we have here is a list of tables. Just like in a spreadsheet you'd have a list of spreadsheets. I built a few to help with the demo. Mostly I'm going to be showing you when we get that far my real working system. So these are tabs that lead to individual tables. We're looking at a table that's called tasks, model. This area right here is the table. Across here are things you can do with the table, and I'll show you those in a bit. Down here are views you can take of different ways of displaying the information that's in the table by selecting certain records or eliminating certain fields or sorting the records or a variety of things. But you can define different views, and I'll show you all about how to do all of those things. So just as with a spreadsheet, there are the columns, in this case they're called fields, have names that are at the top, and individual cells, you can go to individual cells and see the information there. Airtable uses what's called strong data typing. So this is not just, if this were in a spreadsheet, this would just be a text field, but this is actually a selector field. I've defined a set of options that I can choose, and I'm able to choose one for each record. I generally put in any table, I tend to put a notes field, and I'm almost always glad I did that. So this is just the text name. This is the multiple selector. This is long text. These little symbols here. This A, which means it's text, alphanumeric, whatever, with the extra stuff showing extra lines represents a long text. This represents just a simple text field. And you can see the little symbol for a drop-down box actually that represents the selector. This is a URL. So this table does have the purpose of a to-do list. I call it a tasks table because it's generally good to name tables based on what the individual content elements of those tables are. So this is not a to-do, it's a task. So I call the table tasks. I can define a task here that I want to do, give it a priority, have notes about it. If it's an online task, I can add a URL. So here I've said read newspapers, one of my priorities. Let's click on this. We're at the Denver Post now reading today's newspaper. So I can use that URL field to take me to anything that's addressable on the web. And as you'll see in a little while, a lot of things within Airtable are addressable on the web, and that's one way of connecting up tables. So I'll work on my ancestry tree. If I click there, I'm off at Ancestry at a sort of a welcome site, but I'll say go to tree, and there's my ancestry tree. So right away, you can see a convenience. You can do something a little like that with spreadsheets, but you probably wouldn't because it's too cumbersome. And this is one of many examples in which the usability of Airtable makes it possible or practical for you to do things that you really wouldn't try to do with simple spreadsheets. And pay bills. So now there are different things that I can do to affect what information I'm showing and in what order. I can hide fields. Let me hide the notes field just for an example, and you see that I'm seeing all of the records in the table, but not all of the fields. And you can see that when I make one of these selections up here, it's now marked in a way that makes it obvious to me that I have done something to cause myself to see other than the whole list of records with all the fields in the order in which they were entered. I'm going to bring that field back. I can filter the table. So I just clicked on filter, and it's giving me the I hope I'm not going to have much trouble of this sort. Okay, I'm going to go back now to filter. It's giving me the option to add a condition that defines which records I want to see. So I'm going to add a condition. Maybe I want to see all records that are have a priority that's one of, did that a little fast. I'm going to back out and do it again. I'm going to do it more slowly. Chris, stop me if you find me doing that. That's a nasty habit I have. Filter, and I've selected priority as a field that I want to filter on. And I selected is any of, but I can see back here, I have the other fields. I can pick the field. I have a number of operators. I can show all records where the priority is a particular value or is not, or is any of a set of them, or none of a set of them, or is empty or is not empty. And in general, I have a set of operators that make sense depending upon what the type of the field is. So I picked is any of, and I'm just going to say if it's either high or medium, I want to be able to see it. Otherwise, I don't want it there. And that's what I get. A nice feature of this I'm sorry, that's a comment that's about applicable to the sort, not to this. Never mind. Take it all back. So, and I can delete the condition with a little trash can. It's very easy to do these operations. I'm not going to show you group. Well, I'll show you, but I can group this on priority, let's say, and I just get a different view of the same records, but sorted out by priority into different groups. I'm going to ungroup it. Sometimes I click a little X to delete one of these. Sometimes I click a little trash can, but the effect is the same. I'm going to sort. And there's a pretty natural sort here. I'm going to sort by priority. So the high priority tasks are at the top. Now you might ask, how did those get into that order? Part of what I can do, and I'll show you in more detail in a bit, is to define the field type. And here, priority is defined as a single select field. And I've allowed colors to be used, and I've actually defined my preferred colors. And then I've typed in the values, and you'll see this again when we create this table just like this in a bit. But I can also reorder these. I don't know why I would want medium, low, high, but let's assume that that's what I want. That's what I get. So the order with a lot of things I can choose to alphabetize the task names or things like that with selector fields. I order them manually as a rule, and I'll put that back the way it was. I will show you that part in more detail in a minute or two when I'm showing you how to create a table. So I'll unsort these so that we're seeing again the order in which, oh well, I've actually managed to put them in this order now. Okay, natively. I can define a color. Well, I'll just show you the effect of that. This is not terribly useful, but Well, it is useful for in a different context than we're looking, but I've just said I want to color the records based on the value in the priority field. And now you see over here at the left, there's a little color code, which I could see even if I for some reason can't see the priority field, the color coding is still there. That can be handy. Undo my damage here. I'll just leave that, doesn't matter. I can pick different row heights. In this case, it doesn't, right now it doesn't matter because I don't have any content that's more than one line, but I can, if I had long text here, I can make it possible for me to read more of it or less of it. I can get, obviously, if I click short, I get the maximum number of records in the display. If I click extra tall, I get the maximum amount of content showing. Of course, I can also control that in the usual way by dragging these little dividers, and I can, if I am trying to look at a lot of text, I'll probably drag that out and set this to extra tall, and now I have quite a lot of room here actually for text to display. And finally, the URL field, and all I do there is just I copy a URL from somewhere and paste it in there. So, and then if I click on it once, I'm on the field, so I can do things like delete that URL. And there is undo, and there are longer term undo features that you find in a different way, but I don't find that I use those much. So that's, I'm not going to show you share view except to say that that's ways in which you can share a read-only view of the current table with someone else, either by sending an email or even by posting the URL online. That can be handy. There's another thing you can do with it. So those are the basic operations that I can do across here.
Watching your cursor, Deb has a question. Does right-click work within Airtable? And
yes.
Watching you undo, I didn't see you go up to the top. So did you?
I use a keyboard shortcut. Sorry, Control
okay.
Z. Yeah. No, I just right-clicked on the top on the task header here. You see?
Okay.
You're seeing the pop-up menu, right?
Yes.
And there are a lot of those everywhere. Now there are also a lot of occasions in which you get the little downward pointing caret, which if you left click on it, you're going to get the same effect. But there are places in which you can right click where well, that does appear. There are places where the right click is the preferred way for you to get at some functionality. I will say in general about Airtable, it is I'm a software ergonomist. Usability was my profession. And the Airtable folks are amazingly insightful designers. It's very rare for me to wish that I could do something and not discover to my embarrassment that it was there all along. So if you have a question of the sort, can it do that? The answer is probably yes, whether I know how to do it or not. I've oversold them now. I'm sure you'll find some exception, but anyway. So now let's look at views. When I first create a table, and this table, as far as the views are concerned, this is what you initially see when you create a table. It says grid view. That means this grid or array layout is what you got. And the title is also here. I can double click on it and edit it. I can also pick the little downward pointing caret on the view name, and I can rename it. I can also right click on it and I can rename it. So the different ways to access stuff that you're used to in Windows apps and probably in Mac apps, I'm not a Mac person, are here. I know the mice on a Mac work differently, so I can't really help you with that. But But I might want to create different views for some reason. What kind of views would make sense here? Let's see, one kind of view. I generally, here's my standard practice with these tables. I changed the name of this to main view. And my personal view for my personal practice for my own use is that I always make sure that the main view continues to show every record in every field. So I can always count on being able to go back to that view and see everything. But I can create another view. So this little plus sign right here, I'm going to create a view. And what would be useful? Let's try important. Okay, I'm going to create. I clicked on the plus sign. I now typed in the name important, and I'm going to click create new view. There are other more advanced options here and there. I'm generally going to skip over those. They would overload you with information, and if you actually decide to try Airtable, you'll find them quickly enough anyway on your own. So now I have another second view, and it's got all the records and all the fields. But I'm going to filter this view. In fact, I already telegraphed this. I'm going to say I want to look at anything where the priority is any of, high, or medium. Was it clear what I did? It's the same as I did before. That's why I didn't slow down too much. And now, so now I have a view of this table, which is about what are the more important tasks to do. Let's go back and look at the main and see what else could make sense. How about, I'll create another view. I'll call it online. And I will create it. And I will filter it so that I'm seeing only records in which the URL is not empty. So now here's a view that lets me focus on the tasks that I can do online. And the views in Airtable are an extremely powerful feature. They're, in my mind, of the many advantages that Airtable has over spreadsheets, they're among one of the top two for me. So that's views. There are also a number of sort of other forms of view. I'll show you a Kanban view just to because it's conceivably one you might want to use. I'm going to select the priority field. And so now I have the records all laid out in columns by priority. Now, I claimed that anything that you might think you want to do in Airtable, you can probably do. I'm going to make that a medium priority task. I mean, stuff like that just works here. I forget what, it's probably pay bills. That ought to be a high priority. So, there are different views, and they're an important usability feature in my mind. So now I'm going to show you how to create that table. Let me go back first, though, to the. I'm just showing my PowerPoint through a tab in the browser so that it's easy for me to switch back and forth, and you still see it through Zoom. We're going to build this table, but throughout the presentation, from here on, I'm going to be using this kind of a diagram to represent a table. It's very straightforward. You probably already fully understand what it means, but just in case, this is about a table whose name is tasks, and each record in the table has 4 fields: a task field, priority field, a notes field, and a URL field. So I want to make sure you understand that because, well, you will anyway. I'll force you to because I'm going to use it over and over in the presentation. So let's go add a table. Here's the plus sign. This was a list of tables, you'll recall. I'm going to click on the plus sign. I have a lot of options here. I can import from Excel or a CSV file or Google Sheets. I can sync data from a number of places. I'm not showing you all that except to mention that it's there. I'm going to create an empty table. And by implication, you can see that the highlighted there's already a tab here and the title field is highlighted. By implication, it's asking me what should be the name of this table. So I type in the name tasks. And for my own reasons, I would prefer to put the new things that we create over here at the left end. So I just drug that tab over. And when you create a new empty table, it generally comes up in a form that's very much like a to-do list. So it has some predefined fields. I don't want to use those today. I think it will be clearer for you if I delete those and create the fields that we want from scratch. So I'm not going to use those, but it's just as easy to reconfigure them into the shape I want as it is to create new fields. I just want to show you the most basic function, and the rest you'll figure out if you decide to use it. I'll just mention for anybody who happens to know about databases that, like other database technology, there is such a thing as a key field in Airtable, but it has no effect on anything I'm going to show you, and that's as much as I'm ever going to say about it today, except that it's always the first field, and I can't delete it, so I can't delete that and start empty. So what I want to do is define a field whose name is task singular, and which is of type simple text field. So I'm going to click on the caret, pick customize the field type. I have lots of other options here, as you can see. I generally don't use those except for the customize, rename, and delete, but the others are there. I think some of these are duplicative sort, an alphabetic sort, and those I think are equivalent to using the filter. But anyway, I'm going to put customize. And so I'm now being given an opportunity to tell it a name and a field type. And I can add a description. I generally don't use those, but that's down here. So I want the name to be not name, but task. And I want the field type to be single line text. So it's already set right. Since that's the case, I'll just accept it. But when we're doing the next one, I'm going to show you what all the options are for field types. So now I think the second field was priority. If it's not, it's really easy to change. You see where the plus sign is now for adding a new field. This is going to be the list of fields in the table. And at the far right end, there's the plus sign that I click on to add a new field. And if I get this table, if I get a lot of fields in it, I do have to scroll across. There will be a scroll bar at the bottom. I have to scroll across to the right end in order to get access to that. Field name is going to be priority. And I have a lot of field types to choose from. Link to another record we'll get to later. Single line text, a long text with or without rich text like bold and italics and all. I can attach files. I can define a checkbox field, a multiple select field, which is like I'm going to define a single select field here and scroll down. Oops. I'm going to define a single select field where only one only one value is possible in the field, but there are also multiple select where multiple values chosen from the list can be stored in a single cell. Collaborator, I've never used. I guess that's if I have a multi-team Airtable. I can have a date field. I can have a phone number, email, URL, number, which I can force to be an integer or define its format. Currency, I've never used. It's clear what it does. Percent, duration, ratings. Some of these I've never, formulas for calculated fields, that's useful from time to time. Roll-ups, I don't even know what that is. Counts of various things. There are a lot of options here, more than you would ever want, and more obviously than I actually use. But I want a single select field, so that's what I'm going to pick, which is priority. I can either allow colors or not, and under different circumstances, one of those seems to me to be the right choice, and under other circumstances, others. You're going to see a case later on, I've noticed, in which there are so many colors that it may be overwhelming to you on first view. But I find them, once you're familiar with your own table, those colors aren't going to bother you and they can be useful. And then I can add options. So I'm going to add the option high, medium, low, done. Very easy for me to say waiting, not applicable. I just all kinds of things that I might want to do here, but those are the ones I'm going to use. I'd like to define the colors. So I'm going to click here, see the little caret here that's a selector field anyway, and I'm going to pick a color. Those are my choices. When I have something like this, I tend to use traffic light colors. And so with high at the top, there's another way of looking at it in which green is the right thing for high priority, but I use traffic light colors for such things. And for done or other similar things that suggest inaction, I always use black. Just my practice. You get to do what you want. And I'm going to say create the field. So I now have a priority field. Now I'm going to create a notes field. So I'm going to add a field. I want the name to be notes. You don't have to do notes, obviously, if you don't want to. I find it useful so much that I just always add it from the beginning. And I want it to be a long text, sort of logically unlimited in the length and character set and so on that I can use in it. And when I do a long text, I get to choose whether I can enable rich text like bold, italics, and so on. And under circumstances in which I'm taking the notes, I enable that because sometimes I want to bold stuff and make it stand out, but it's not an important feature, I think. And I create the field. And finally, I want to create a URL field. So I'm going to call that URL. And scroll down. I can just type U in the field here and, oh, well, I take it back. Huh, now that's interesting. Why did that not work? Oh, well, I don't know. It gave me some fields there that don't have a U in it. I don't understand that, but that's my problem. And so having typed URL, I get URL as an option. I'm going to click on that. So, and I'm going to create the field. Now, I don't know if I can do from memory. I think I had eat breakfast. And knowing what I was taught in grade school about nutrition, I know that that this is something I want to show you later, but not now. I know that this is very important, so I'm going to click high. And I think my next one, I don't remember. Let's actually build it the same way. Pay bills. Well, now it says pay bills because I reordered it. Okay, pay bills, work on ancestry tree, read newspaper, fine. Pay bills. But I'm getting a little tired, so let's go over here. I'm going to click on that field, hold down the shift key and go down. Use the keyboard shortcuts to copy those two items onto my clipboard. Go back here, go to the same place, use the keyboard shortcut for paste. And in this case, it only gives me 3 records when I create a new table. And so pasting those 2 items here is actually going to create another record. It just wants permission. And I do want to give it permission. So there we are. So you can copy from Google Sheets or a spreadsheet or whatever and paste in here. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that you must have set up the fields ahead of time in the table so that they match what you're pasting in from the spreadsheet. So pay bills, I think that's pretty important. I think I had a note here like remember rent or something. Work on ancestry tree. I think for ancestry on the newspaper, I had no notes, but once again, I don't necessarily, well, I do remember these 2, but it'll be easier to just copy and paste those as well. So I'm just going to do that. Oops, I accidentally hit the wrong key. Okay, so there's our table. Now, I think I'll show you one more time building views, and I'll just do it the same way I did before. I'm going to try when it's about how to operate Airtable. I'm going to try to make sure I show you each thing twice, and probably only twice in general, because I've got a lot of other stuff I want to cover about how to make use of it. But I think I said that I call my default view main view, and then I create any other views that I want. And I'm going to create a view that's about, I think I said important. And I'm going to filter it on priority. And I would like the priority of anything that's either high or medium. So there I created the second view. Let's create a third view. That was, I think, online. I just made up some that were obvious to do from that little tiny table. And I'm going to filter it on the condition that the URL is not empty. And I actually created a Kanban view that's based on priority. So now I have just gone back to what we had. I would say that the first time you come in to use Airtable, if you decide to do it, it might take you 5 to 10 minutes to create the first table because you will have forgotten some little thing. And when you're experienced, you can probably create this whole table with all the views in 5 minutes. It's maybe less. It's very easy to use, and once you get used to it, it's really quite natural. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Got to use this when I change slides. Oh, actually, I went too far. So let's create a second table now, and I'm going to call it a persons table. And it's not going to have much in it. My rule for this presentation is baby steps. I want to show you everything in the simplest way that I can. If I were creating a real to-do list, I'd probably put more in it than this. And I have such lists, and they do have more than this. But this is what it took to show you the basics. And same thing here. I'm going to have a whole lot of things I want to store about a person, but all you need to understand the Airtable aspects of this are these three fields. So that's what I'm going to do. Persons field with a name, notes, and an ancestry profile link. That's an URL. So let's go back here. I have one of those here as a model, but I'm just going to create that. I'm going to create an empty table. So I clicked on the plus sign at the right end of the tables list. Clicked on create empty table. I'm going to call it persons. Hit enter. I'm going to put it next to the tasks table just by dragging and dropping. And I'm going to, well, this time I'll just reconfigure from what comes up, except that I only have three fields. So I'm going to go over here to the status field, and I'm going to delete it. That's the last item on the pop-up list here. So I think name and a simple text field is actually what I said that this table was going to have. So I don't have anything to change there. And it actually has a notes field. Shoot, I wasn't trying to make this easy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete the fields and go from scratch because I really do want to make sure you know how to do that. I'm going to click on the plus sign for fields. It's at the right end of the list of fields, just as the plus sign for tables was at the right end of the list of tables. I'm going to say the field is notes. I'm going to say the field type is long text. I'm going to enable rich text formatting. You don't have to. You may have different preferences. There it is. I'm going to create a URL field. So I clicked on the plus sign, URL, and I'll remember to, this time it worked. I don't know why that didn't work before. So I just typed the letter U and up popped a list, which included the URL. So I'm going to click URL, create that field. Now in this case, I am going to go to my little model here and I'm going to copy this stuff over. You don't need to watch me type in stuff, and I don't remember the URLs. So I'm going to just, I prepared a little list. These are names of people in my ancestry. And I'm going to go to the new table and paste them in. And here are links to their ancestry profiles. I'm going to copy and paste. So now we've done this much. Before I go on, Chris, are there any questions of understanding that I might answer now? Because that's all I'm going to show you about explicitly about creating tables, about the operations across the, what can I do on a table list. That's, and I should, while I'm talking. So all I'm going to show you about creating tables, about the list, this list across the top, about the list of views. I will occasionally touch on those for one reason or another, but I want to make sure those are understood, because in this presentation, I don't intend to do that anymore. Anything there?
I think that the questions we have will be answered as you move forward.
Okay.
So I think everybody gets how to make a table. If I'm wrong, type something in real quick.
Okay. Okay, so now let's see what we're going to do next. And I already showed you by accident. Let's connect those two tables. This is where the power starts. Although these two simple tables, even with their connection, aren't going to be very impressive, but they'll help you understand how to connect tables in one of the two available ways. And those connections are very powerful. So I want to, what I would like is to have a URL that points to the person record for a particular individual. So that's what I'm going to create. I'm going to go to the persons table. And for McKinney-McCoy, every one of these records has a URL. There's also a way of showing the content of the record. This little double pointed arrow thingy, it means expand. You're used to it from full screen, the same symbol. Expand record, that lets me see the contents of a single record, not in the context of the table, but just by itself. I can scroll up and down if it's got enough material to need it. And I could get the URL that will bring me to right here by clicking there. It's now on my clipboard. But another way to get it is to right click anywhere in this record and pick, you can see some options here. I can pick copy record URL. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to paste that. Well, I have to first create a, let's see, work on McKinney. So I'm creating a new task in the table, and I'm going to paste the URL there. And this isn't as important as a good breakfast, but it's pretty important, so I'll call it medium. So now, if I'm looking at my task list and I see that I work on McKinney as one of the items, I can click here. Actually, I have to click twice because once brings me to that cell of the table, and the second one takes me to the URL that it contains. So that brings me to his record. And by the way, from his record, I can go to the ancestry side. You'll see much more of this later, but the function of the person's record is going to turn out to be to serve as a connector hub that lets me get to lots of places associated with the person. Right now, there's just one place, it's ancestry. I'm going to close these tabs along the way because I don't want a clutter of tabs that starts to become confusing to me. I'm not worried about you because you're not probably looking up there, but I will be. So I'm going to hit the escape key to get back to here. So I've just created a connection. I'm going to create you'll see. Well, I'll do it one more time just to make sure you saw the steps. So let's create a tasks table link to the record of Michael Robeson here. I'm going to right click on Michael Robeson, copy the URL, go to the tasks table, say Michael, go over to the URL cell of that record and paste. So now if I'm here and I click on that, once to get to the cell, once to go to the place, I'm at the person record for Michael Robeson. And if I click on his ancestry link, that's where I am. I think that's clear, but Chris will pass on questions if somehow that wasn't clear. I'm going to clean up after myself. And that's an example of a URL link. That's sort of a weak link. It has the advantage, well, we'll get to this later, but it has a strong advantage that I can go anywhere on the internet, as well as to certain useful places in Airtable with a URL type link. There's a stronger, much tighter link that's a property of relational databases. It's the relation in that name, but we'll get to that later. So I've connected those two tables. What can we do with, what else can we do with linked tables? Let's try, okay, that's right. And I'm supposed to show you something before continuing. URL type links can have different targets. You've already seen that I can get to the Denver Post by implication anywhere on the web. And I just showed you that I can link to a single record. But I can also link to a whole table. or to a specified view of a table. Now I'm going to use some of these features later on in this presentation. So I've made my own little extension to this kind of diagrams called an entity relation graph. And if I have a URL that points to a single record, you'll see a little R here. And if it points to a view of a table, you'll see a V here. And if it points to the whole table, you'll see a T here. So now that you know that, well, let me show you that in the context of what we've already built. That's the right thing for me to do next. Too many things open. I'm going to go back here. I don't have any views, I don't think, over here in persons. So let me create a view. You see there are two guys here called Robeson. I'm going to create a view called Robeson. And I'm going to set its filter so that it shows me any record where the name is one of, really? Oh, contains. I'm sorry. I don't have a key field, a selector field to go on. Okay, contains is what I really mean here. Robeson. So I've now created a view that has two records in it. I'll use that to illustrate a link to a view from our little tasks table. So back to the tasks table. I'll create another work on Robeson family. You're going to get tired of the Robeson family before this presentation is over. And I'm going to, I failed to collect the URL of this view. So I'm looking at a particular view. You can see that. I hope it's clear. Robeson view of the persons table. Well, the browser always shows me the URL of the current place that I'm located in the web. So I'm going to just copy and paste that. So I've collected from the browser URL field. I hope URL is meaningful to everybody. It's Uniform Resource Locator. It's the web address. That's what URL means. I think everybody knows that term by now. But so now I'm going to go back to the task table, and for the work on Robeson family task, I'm going to paste in the URL that I just copied. I hope I remembered to copy it. And if I click on that link, that's where I'll be. That's the process for building a link to a view of a table. I create the view in the table. I grab the URL from the browser, and I paste it in wherever I want the forward link to live. In this case, in the tasks table right here. And I can create a link to a whole table. In all honesty, it's cheating to tell you that, because what I'm actually creating when I do that is a link to the default view of the table. So they're really, I lied when I said there were 4 different things. There are really just 3. But the effect is, if I want the effect of seeing the whole table, I just grab the URL when I'm looking at a view of the whole table, and I use that. So, cleaning up after myself, let's see what we want to do next. Let's look at how to build well, I'm not going to create it, it's already built, but let's look at a timelines table. I know you're all familiar with timelines, but here, in a nutshell, my real timelines have a little more, but in a nutshell, I view a timeline as a view, a collection of, that's the point of view here, a collection of records, and it's going to be a view for the person. So a view will constitute a timeline, and it will have multiple records of individual events in the timeline of a single person. That'll be clear when you see, but hopefully you get the idea. And each event, each line, each entry in the timeline has a name for the person that it applies to, a name for the event, type like census or land record or whatever it is, a date, a place, a source citation, a URL that leads to the record page on wherever it's located on Family Search or Ancestry, whatever, and my ever-present notes field. Now I've already created that. I've created that ahead of time, just a simple example. Here's a timelines table right here. So here we have a whole hodgepodge of timeline records, but let's just pick one to make it clear what's in a record. So here's, I hope I picked one that doesn't have much in it. Let me go deliberately find. I'm going to do things in a different order. Let me create views for the individuals that are here, so I can find the record I'm after. Here's how it works. Those are all the timeline entries, but I never really work on them that way. I work on them in the form, I'm going to create a view for McKinney-McCoy. By the way, I use in places where it matters as key fields, the names that I use for people are their birth year, whether it's known or estimated, followed by the name. I find that really works well for me. You'll have to get used to it for the duration of this presentation, but you may or may not want to ever do things that way. I'm going to copy this to the clipboard. I'm going to create a view, a grid view. I'm going to give it the name I just copied. I'm going to create it. I'm going to filter it by name. That's the first field in the record. And filter it so it's anybody whose name is exactly, I'm going to paste it in one more time from the clipboard, McKinney-McCoy. And so this is what McKinney-McCoy's timeline looks like. It has some now obsolete in my system to do records and stuff, but basically it has just what you'd expect: birth, name, marriage, census, land, slave deed. I have several ancestors, maybe a bunch, who were slave owners. I'll mention more about that later. Census records, proof of correctness of a census that I built, death and burial. So that's what a timeline looks like. And I could stop now and create views for the other three people that I happen to have put information for in this timelines field, but it's probably beside the point. That's what how a timelines field works. And the way that I would use it is, I think I actually already showed this here. So let me go back and talk you through this graph now. This has a task table that's, you've already seen it. It's what we originally built. And it has a persons table. It's what we originally built, except that I've added a timeline field that's a URL that points to a view, that person's view of the timelines table. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go back to the persons table we built. I'm going to add a field. So it already has a McKinney-McCoy. It already has a URL in it that points to his ancestry profile on his profile on ancestry.com. I'm going to add a field called timeline, and it's going to be a URL. I apparently didn't click create. And now I'm going to go back to the timelines field. I'm on his view. I'm going to grab the URL from the browser, copy it, go to the persons table. Sorry, I went to my real system. That's why I'm confused. Let's go back to the demo base for the moment. So I'm going to go back to the persons table, and there's a place for the URL for his timeline right here. I'm going to paste it in. So now I can click on Michael Robeson's ancestry and I go there, but I can also click on Kenny McCoy's timeline and I go here. That's pretty powerful. Hopefully you got the point, but you're going to see real examples of that a little later on. So I built this much of a system. The key table for this system is the persons table. You'll see more and more. Well, let me show you just one. This little persons table with just an ancestry profile probably didn't look like much to you, but I think I have a pointer here. This is a pointer to my real working system, but I've created a filter to use to show you that has just that much information in it. And here you can already see that it might be useful to have that because in my system, I can focus in on a particular family. Now I have access to, I can bounce around ancestry profiles for various members of the family. But I can also expand the view here so that you see other profiles. So now all of a sudden I can open Richard Robeson's ancestry profile, but I can also open his family search profile. I can also open his Wikitree profile. I work on all of those. I can also open his profile in MyHeritage tree. I can have all those open while I'm working on them. I just thought I'd stop and show you that once you put more fields in these tables, they start to acquire real power, and you'll see that in the demo later. But anyway, back to the main subject, which is we've gotten this far. I've added timelines as a capability, added a link in the persons field to get to the timeline for an individual. What else can we do while still restricting ourselves to URL type links? We can build a little system for managing correspondence. Not that other genealogists find correspondence and its management to be an issue, but for me it is. I'm going to show you, we're not going to build it, but I'm going to show you a little contacts and correspondence system built using this same approach. I have a record here for each contact, each person with whom I have correspondence, and a record here in which the single record is a single message, or all messages done in the past if I'm importing from an existing system. And it's important to separate these two. I've fallen into the trap multiple times, and you guys probably have too, of trying to have a mixed correspondence with contacts in a single spreadsheet or whatever, and you wind up having to maintain multiple instances of the same name and contact, same email address and whatever for the contact in each of the message records. That's kind of silly. So let's go look at, let's see, this is, close some stuff here. Let's go look at the contacts list. I built a little contacts list. I just imported some real contacts and then made up names for two of them who are still living. This is one of my cousins who's deceased, so I'm not worried about that one. I'm being careful in this presentation not to show you anything that might be regarded as confidential. So, um, and here is a correspondence table, and I've developed views for each of the various correspondence. So I'm going to use the URL for the Bill McCoy view as the URL for correspondence with Bill McCoy. I'll say that again a different way. Hopefully it'll be clear. When I'm in this record in the contact list, I see the name Bill McCoy. I maybe have notes about him. I maybe have his email address, though I made that one up. And I have a link to my correspondence with Bill McCoy. And here is my correspondence with Bill McCoy. And similarly, I have two other contacts that are defined here, and I have correspondence with them. They're real correspondence records, but they're made up names for the contacts. So I'll show you one of the powerful features of the amount of connectedness that that Airtable allows. I'm going to go look at. Actually, I meant to come at it from the contacts list. I'm going to look at my correspondence with Julie August. I hope you noticed the play on words there. And I'm going to look at my correspondence with her. I actually started in practice for this presentation. I had it field. I'm going to, suppose I want to send a reply or a new message to her. What do I do? Well, I create a new message. I can click on the plus sign or the plus sign down here, or just click in here. I'm going to say the new message is going to be dated today. It's going to be from me. Could be to me. Could be about the correspondent. Could be a message I'm preparing. Could be any of several things. It's going to be, well, I'll make it a message I'm preparing. It's actually what it is. I wouldn't set it to that if I plan to send the message right now, which I do. But, I'll set this to email. My little system here assumes email is the only way of contacting people, but the real system does more. So I'll say this. I'm not going to have any need to reply to this message. It's from me. But if I wanted to mark a message from her as really and urgently in need of a reply, that's what I would do. And I'm going to type the message in here.
How many characters can you do for a message? Is it 2 or 3 lines, 1,000 words? You know, when you get responses, they get big.
I am totally unaware of any limit. That's what it's the long text field. In the old days, you might have thought it would be limited to 32,284 or whatever the multiple of 2 is characters. There might be a limit of 5,000. I don't think there is a limit. I really don't. But I haven't hit it, and I do a lot of stuff. So I'm not going to type in a message here, but I would type in the message here. What do I do then? Well, let's copy it. Let's go back to the contacts list. Let's click on her email address, which is mine because I don't want to send this message to. Now I'm in a message in my email client, pasting that message in, adding a subject, and sending it. And I have a record of it, permanent record of it, in my correspondence table. And I'll change this to a message from me. And I see by a notification on my iPad that that message just arrived because, again, I'm making up the contact for purposes of this demo. You'll see that one more time. I try to show you everything twice. I'll do that again in the real demo. But So this is convenient. You might think that a system that requires you to store each message, it would be very inconvenient. But if you've kept track of a correspondence, you can just paste the whole correspondence here. I've provided a past conversation type, the field record type, and then only go forward, keeping all the messages. And I think I've just shown you that it can be actually more convenient, not less, to use this as the way of preparing messages that you're going to send. You do have to paste messages in here when you receive them, but all of that is pretty easy. So I have created, really just demonstrated a previously created, because we're not creating during this presentation anymore, a correspondence system. What do I do with that? Well, here's one possibility. So I've now said in this graph, in this diagram, that a URL field could point to a record in the contacts list. So I might have, let's build it. Just, I think, yeah, I think we're in plenty of time that I can afford to go and do that. I need to think for a second. I want to go to the contacts list. I want to get the record for Julie August, copy its URL, go back to the task list, reply to Julie, paste in that URL, and now when I'm here in my to-do list, if I click on that, I'm in her record in the contact list, and if I click on that, I'm in our correspondence history. So navigation in multiple directions is very easy, although one of the properties of a URL link is that it's one directional. So the reason I was able to do that easily is because I could easily go back to the persons table, or to the contacts table, which is already open. I'm referring to the previous action, actually. Anyway, it's all pretty easy, in my opinion. It will not be like a piece of cake for you the first time you try any of it, but I think I'm showing you enough that you'll remember you can do it and remember how to figure out how to do it. So, and I'm always around if you need help with that. So I'm going to clean up after myself and go back to the PowerPoint. So now we need to talk about a second kind of link. I've shown you a URL type link. I'm calling it a weak link. It's powerful in the sense of being flexible, but it's not powerful in the sense of the tightness of connection. There's a second kind of link. It's the true database relation that gives relational databases their name. And it's a link between two tables. You create it from one of the tables, but it actually isn't a directional link. It operates in both directions. And when you create one, the effect is that you get, if I create a link between the tasks table and the persons table, the effect is to create a field in the tasks table that says persons, and a field in the persons table that's named tasks. And those fields contain the power of the link. So let's go do that. Let's do it with our little tasks and persons table that we built. So I'm going to go back there to the tasks table. And I'm going to create a field, clicking on the plus sign. And I'm going to make it of type link to another record. And it's going to offer me a list of tables that I might be connecting to. So I'm in the tasks table. I want to connect to the persons table. I'm going to pick persons. And don't know whether it's, I don't think I actually have to fill that out, but I could be wrong. And I generally allow linking to multiple records. You can force it to allow, well, limit record selection to a view. And that, however, doesn't present the views the way that we want to present them, as if we were editable and in the form of the whole table, the whole view. So I'm going to create the field allowing multiple records. And there's another feature that it makes available to me that I'm not going to teach you about today. So I've now created a link to the persons table. If I go to the persons table, I've now created a link to the tasks table. Now what this lets me do is connect individual records in one of these tables with individual records in the other. So let's go to this work on Robeson family task, and I'm going to enable it in a different way by clicking on the cell, the person's cell for that record. I'm in the record work on Robeson family. I'm in the field persons, referring to a link to the persons table. And I want to choose the records that I connect to. Well, I'm working on the Robeson family, so I want to connect to Richard, and I want to connect to Michael. I wouldn't do this function this way, but I'm trying to show you how links work using what we already know. And oh, here's a Michael task. Let's go up here and make this link this record to just Michael. So look at what I've done. I haven't shown you what it means to have such links, but I've created a link that ties the Michael record in the tasks table to the Michael Robeson record in the persons table. And I've created, in the work on Robeson family record, I've created links to two records in the persons table. Those are the two Robesons I happen to have there. What happens when I click on one? Let's click on Richard. I'm now in the persons table. See this little, here's where you are thing. I'm looking at a single record in the persons table, and it's the record for Richard Robeson. Back to where I was. I'm in the task table. I'm supposed to, let's say, work on, well, okay, I picked a bad example. But let's suppose this said work on, I want to work on Richard. So I click on Richard there, and I can go to his ancestry tree or his timeline if you had one or whatever. So I can do more or less whatever is enabled by the record I'm linked to. And I'm linked from work on Robeson family to these two records. I'm hoping that's clear. Let's go look from the person's side and see what's linked to what. Richard Robeson, I just linked him to the task work on Robeson family. Michael Robeson, I just linked him both to the task work on Robeson family and to the task Michael. So I can go back and look at the work on Robeson family task from within the persons table. This is a bidirectional linkage. And you notice that when you probably did notice, but just to be clear, I created two links that go to Michael Robeson from different tasks in the tasks table. and only one link that led to Richard Robeson from here. And when I went back over here, you see that there are two different tasks in the tasks table that I linked to for Michael and one for Richard. So I really have linked the two records together, the task record for Michael with the person record for Michael. I think I'm going to stop and ask if there are questions here about this. This is the hardest and last Airtable concept that you're going to encounter today. Everything else, anything else that's complicated is going to be because of the genealogy. I'm going to show you real genealogy with a system that uses this approach. But is it clear about linking? Where am I? I guess I was here, right here. Is it clear about linking two tables using the true database link, the database relation? I promised.
Find an advantage to the link within Airtable. Well, if the URL becomes, I guess that would be the advantage if the URL.
I thought I had a slide about that. Wow, I don't. Okay, apologies for that. Well, I'll have to say it then. I'm sorry, I think you asked, I wasn't paying total attention because I was paying attention to my oversight. I think you asked, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these two different kinds of links? Is that what you asked?
Correct.
And I have a slide for that, and I don't know why it's not in here. So let's talk about it. The URL gets anywhere on the internet. It can lead you to a view. That's its most powerful use, in my opinion, in the system design I'm showing you. It's one directional. That's a disadvantage. If the thing pointed to moves, then it can break the link. That won't happen if you're linking to something within Airtable, because those URL links don't move. You can change names of tables, names of people, names of everything. That's not going to affect the link. It's built in based on the unique codes that Airtable assigns to those entities. But things on the web can move around. If I point to a profile on Ancestry and they suddenly change their whole URL addressing scheme, which would be a remarkable error, then it'll break all my Ancestry links. What else is a disadvantage? I think I already said probably twice that the URL link is one direction, can't go the other way. The true database relation is a much tighter relationship. It doesn't link tables to, well, it's linking two tables together. But when you then make use of it, you're linking individual records to individual records. One thing you're not doing, which we did over here with the URL link, is link a record in one table to a bunch of records in the other table. Let me go back to the task list. I've linked this task, work on Robeson family, to two records that are in the Robeson family. And I can go and look at one or the other, but I can't go and look at all of them together the way that I can in a view. If I use this to build timelines, for example, I could only edit a timeline by working on one record at a time. That wouldn't make any sense. So if I want to get to a view that has multiple records in a table, I need the URL. But this, as I say, this is a tight linkage because it's bidirectional. I'm going to zip forward. No, I'm not. I'm not. Because it's bidirectional, I can navigate my way around. And if I connect the persons table to a bunch of things, which I will in a while, in a little while, the persons table will be connected to correspondence. And some new things I haven't shown you, and timelines, and well, actually not timelines. Well, persons table will. If I have all those other things connected via a strong, true database for links, I can navigate my way around among all those things. That's a great power. But I think that's it. I think that's all I had in the slide that's supposed to be here and isn't. Apologies for that. Any other questions at this point?
We're at 11:31, so we
I
need
have, yeah, I thought I had 2 hours, and I'm planning my
Yeah.
talk to go till about 1 hour and a half,
Okay,
or a little less, perhaps.
okay.
Thanks for the reminder, but
Let's
I wanna-
finish the presentation and then we'll go back in for questions.
yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
I think I've allowed time for that.
All right,
One thing I could do here is link the contacts table with the persons table, and I think I'll go do that just to show you the process one more time of doing the linkages. I am in this contacts table. I'm going to add a field called persons. It's a link field. Call it persons. I think it would create that. I don't know why I don't know that. But I'm going to make it a link field, and I'm going to pick the persons table. That's all I have to do. Create a field, pick a link field, pick the persons table, create it. Skip that step because I'm not teaching that today. And I have the ability to connect persons to contacts. Why would I do that? Well, it could be one reason to do that might be that I've been corresponding with Julie August about Michael Robeson. I haven't because she's made up, but you'll see me actually using a link like this in the demo later. So another reason might be that Bill McCoy, he is deceased, alas, but maybe he's maybe he's this guy. He's not that Kenny McCoy. So two reasons why I might want to connect the persons table and the contacts table are I'm either engaged in correspondence about a person or the contact is the actual person. Now, those would both be reasons for connecting those two tables, and they would allow me to quickly get from, for example, the persons table into the correspondence with that guy or about that guy. And I'll use that in my real demo later. Okay, so now I'd like to go on. I created that link. I'm going to say about 2 minutes at most about handling DNA matches. There's a complication in dealing with DNA matches. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about DNA. I think it would take too much time in a presentation that's trying to be this basic, but it's also well covered by Nicole Dyer of Family Locket, and I give the links to that in the handout. But the fundamental problem that you have in handling DNA matches is that there are potentially a multiplicity of tests that both you and the other, tests that the other person has taken. No, I'm sorry. There is potentially a multiplicity of tests that both you and the other person have taken. You may both exist on Ancestry, both on 23andMe, both on MyHeritage, and that gets you multiple tests that are about a single DNA cousin. In order to handle that complication without things getting all out of whack, you really need the true database relation that lets you match multiple instances of match details at a particular company with the resulting centimorgans and of match and other stuff, match page and tree taken from there, to attach multiple instances of such tests with a single cousin who's going to turn out to be one of the people in your persons table too, before we're done. And to do this in detail, you really need yet a third table, which is about segments, because a single test may result in multiple segments. And that whole design is, Nicole Dyer has done an excellent job of that in that aspect of her design, and made available even a downloadable template, Airtable template for doing it. I have qualms about a little bit of the other things that her design tries to do, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So here's a really interesting one. And to show you this, I'm going to go to my real working system. But there's nothing about the design of a link to another table, the true database relation, that prevents you from linking the table to itself. Why would you do that? Well, if you have a table that contains information about a whole bunch of people, and some of them are the children of others of them, you can build a tree with a true database link and use it to manage your research on a different kind of tree on Ancestry or whatever. So I'm going to show you that by going to my actual live system. I'm going to go to descendancy. I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the descendants for McKinney McCoy, not Hugh McCoy or Donald McCoy or Sarah Sally Herndon. In other words, in this single descendancy table, I have multiple descendancy trees. I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the one for McKinney McCoy. Use my brick wall. And I'm going to use a plugin app called OrgChart. Now, this is the one place in the whole presentation where I'm going to show you something that requires a paid subscription to Airtable. It's one of the plugin apps that you get if you have a paid subscription. And you may or may not find it, I find it worth enough to pay for the subscription all by itself. But so what it lets me do is build a tree. Here's McKinney McCoy. Here's my brick wall. And here are descendants of his. And if I go over here far enough, I'm going to say here's earliest children. If I go over here far enough, I'm going to find one that I've marked. This is where I'm working now. And where is it? This is where I'm working. This is where I'm working. And I'm going to go work on this person in order to extend the tree downward. So I'm going to work on this person by going to her. This is a record in my descendancy tree. I'm not going to try to show you its contents in detail. I'm going to show you what it allows me to do. I'm going to go to this ancestry tree. I'm going to do a ancestry workup for her. I'm going to figure out who I think her children are. I'm going to build nodes here for her children. They already exist on Ancestry because that's where I did the workup. And I'm going to add them here as children of Bertie Lee Hearn. And when I do that, they also will have records on here. I do a lot of descendancy analysis, and that is a very powerful way of managing it. I've tried before to manage a descendancy analysis on an ancestry tree, just for example. It's a great place to work on genealogy. It's a terrible place to manage the process of working on genealogy. And that's what I'm trying to show you things about. So there's another interesting feature here. If I'm using OrgChart, I get to, I showed you that you can use color codes that produce this kind of little blue code. You saw those early on in our little to-do list. In this tree, I'm using those codes. Let me get back out far enough that I can show you. In this tree, I have a DNA field, and I use red for DNA match, blue for DNA, and there are some others that are relevant for my present purposes. And I can filter. That OrgChart uses the main view here. Whatever filter I set on this main view, that's what I get. That's why I can do a different descendancy tree in here. But I'm going to add a condition to it. I only want to look at records for which DNA is any of either DNA connection or a DNA match. Now, when I go to OrgChart, there is my DNA match tree for all the descendants that I know of, documented from McKinney-McCoy. So I find I do a lot of descendancy work. I'm doing a research project with 4 other lines that I'm trying to connect to my McKinney-McCoy line, and I'm doing descendancy work on their trees as well as mine, and so on. But so that's another thing you can do with Airtable. But this org chart app does require a paid subscription. So let's go back. And so it's very natural for me to, for any person that's in my descendancy tree and for whom I also have a person record, it's natural for me to create a database link. That's one-to-one. If I'm here, I can go there. If I'm there, I can go here. It's natural for me to create a link connecting DNA match cousins with a person record in the person's table. And I failed to mention this before, so I definitely want to mention it now. I don't create a person record for everybody. I don't create a person record for 95+% of the people in my ancestral tree, probably 98, I don't know, I haven't counted. But I only do it for people I'm doing serious research on. If I'm not doing anything more than what I can do on Ancestry alone, or even Ancestry plus descendancy that I showed you, I don't even create an ancestry tree or any of this other stuff. So it may have seemed like a lot of work to you to create these records in these tables, but I'm only doing it where it matters. So this is the whole picture of what I would, of kind of what I've shown you. And what I propose to do now, I've shown you Airtable's structure, how to do the commands and create views, and I've shown you how to create some subsystems that manage different aspects of doing of genealogical research. And I showed you a diagram that kind of puts it together. And you've seen everything except the answer to one question. Why bother? It will not have escaped your attention that it takes a certain amount of time to build this and to maintain it, because as you're in the process of using it, you're going to want to store links and create records and so on. The question is, it's like anything else in life, there's a cost-benefit trade-off. And nothing that I've done for you so far can possibly give you an impression about the benefit side, really. So best way I know to show you the benefits is to give you a tour of recent research that I've been doing in my actual working system. Now, when we do that, you're going to see more fields in the records. They're real. Some records have way more fields than they need because of historical development and haven't deleted them yet. But some of them need more fields to do the function that I want them to do. And I'm going to be showing you a locality system that I built that's under development. It's not ready for prime time, but I think it's very powerful, and I think you need to see the kind of stuff that it enables as well. Here's what I'd like you to keep in mind. First of all, there's rule one. Rule one is baby steps. Not only are you not going to want to build all of this, even if you find it appropriate all at once, you shouldn't try to do that. What you should try to do if you want to use Airtable is start small. I would build a persons table and use it to get at multiple profiles if you do research on multiple sites about a person. And play with that until you're really familiar with it, comfortable with it, then add something else. I said I was going to unintimidate the technology for you, and this tour might intimidate the technology for you. So I want to make sure I point out to you that all of the complexity that you're now going to see, none of it is due to Airtable. All of it is because doing genealogical research is complicated, and you're going to encounter that complication when I show you the real research. It's inevitable. I'm guessing that the rest of you have also noticed that it's complicated managing such research. So you'll probably appreciate that. What I'd like you to focus on is the workflow I'm not going to slow down to show you how to do stuff in any detail because I want you to experience the flow. I want you to notice the research and my ability to conduct the research, flow around from place to place, find information that's kept in the right context for using it, remember information that I wanted to remember. That truly is the single most difficult aspect in my experience about doing genealogy, is keeping track of all the places. I don't have any trouble remembering the genealogical information. I can use Ancestry and Roots Magic to do that. I have trouble remembering all the places to go for information and how to find the source again and how much of what my plan was and how much of the work I've already done and all that stuff. So I'd like you to try to notice places that I've provided for doing that stuff. I'm going to clean up my browser. I'm actually, well, okay, I'll keep the, in case we need to go back, I'll keep the little demo version. I actually want to go now to my, I'll go all the way to the tasks list, although I normally start with a person view. But we are now in my actual working system. My tasks list has an extra projects field over here, and I use it to partition my tasks into different projects. And so I'm going to show you stuff about the Robeson project. And there's a book I want to look up, so that's one task. But mainly, I work on people that are in the Robeson family. So now I'm in the persons list, looking at a view that's predefined for the Robeson family. This is my third great grandfather. This is my second great grandmother. I'm interested in all these people because I am doing intense location research in the main place where they meet, and B, because McKinney McCoy, Martha Robinson's husband, is my greatest brick wall, and I hope to find information that'll help me since they coexisted in a common area. And C, I'm also involved in the WikiTree U.S. Black Heritage Exchange project. I have a number of slave owners, and there are examples of that in this family that I'm documenting along with whatever is known about their slaves so that descendants of slaves can perhaps find their own families. That's what that project is about. So here we are at the persons, in the persons table for folks in Robeson and Robinson. Their real name was Robeson, but and I have in my tree, I have, oh, I need to scroll. I have status, so I'm working intensively on Michael. That's what I'm going to show you. I have active research going on Richard and Alexander. I finished my pass on research on Wallace, and I have a to-do list for Michael. The to-do list has a whole bunch of stuff in it, but basically it's where I keep my plan for what to do in my research on him. I have links to his ancestry profile, family search profile. The ancestry is in my tree. Family search is a public tree, but I help contribute to it. I have links to his WikiTree profile, which I created and managed, and it's a public tree. I have links to where he is on my heritage. I have links to his timeline, where he is in the descendancy tree, and to the locality system. That's what all is in. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open that one record, and I'm just going to keep it open so I can get to the links about that one person. And I'm going to have that in this tab. I'm going to close this tab. I'm going to have that in this tab on my browser. And I'm going to open his timeline. So now I still have access to the person record. I can bounce around, but here's his timeline. And this is the busy, colorful thing I mentioned. And I'll tell you all about status in a little bit, because I use it to manage a workflow, and I want to show you how you can do that. I color code the types because it just makes it quick and easy for me to find. Land is dirt color. I color code them as best I can so I'll remember, and then it's just really easy to spot them. And I happen to be working. This is still a very busy place, so yesterday I was working on this record, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm going to open it up and show you through what's in a record in the timeline. This is a record in the timeline of 1802 Michael McCleary Robeson. It's a land purchase type. That's just my title. I get to make it up on the fly. It's of type land. That's the type that it occupies in the list I happen to have built. So I built my own selector there and used record types that make sense to me. There's the date of the record. There's the place of the record. I'll show you through status later. I try to summarize every record. So this just tells about what that record is doing. And I have a couple of kinds of source citation I might try to get. I try for family search because those are free. And I use the citations and Wikitree as well. And it's helpful if I don't point people needlessly to ancestry records where users have to have an account, but I can put any of those in. So here's the source citation. I use family search's little summary to start, but I find I always have to munge it a little bit. And here's a link to the record page on family search. When appropriate, but definitely not all the time, I transcribe the records. And I believe I still have brain damage from transcribing this one. This was an incredible mess. But anyway, that's what's in a timeline record for me. And so to manage my development of this timeline, I created a status field. And it's a multiple select field. Here are a whole bunch of steps that I might do for any given record. I absolutely don't do them all for every record, but I might get, if I've created a placeholder for this record here, but I need to go get the information from Ancestry or from my locality system that you're going to see in a minute, then I turn this one on so it'll remind me if I need to just do research on the record before I continue. That's what I do. I either get or build a citation, and I may get it from any of these places, so I mark whatever I'm going to do. For records that I might transcribe, I select this possibility. I try to always summarize. If I'm doing location analysis, serious location analysis in a place, and this is a land record, or really any record that's highly pertinent to the location, then I'll turn this on. For people I'm serious about, I try to make sure that each record that I find is present in the Ancestry and Family Search and Wikisearch profiles for them. And the last step before I'm done is if this is a record that names other people I'm researching, and I need to copy this record to their timelines, then this is my reminder to do that. So that's a way that you can manage a complicated workflow using a multiple selector field. And I don't turn them all on at the beginning. I know that if research is on, I got to reevaluate and now decide what to do. Same thing for some of these other steps. But this tells me what work there is still to do on his timeline. I've been focusing on land records, so I'm going to take you into that system. But let me show you first. It's very, this is a busy place, and if I wanted to show you just the land records, here's what I would do. But if I wanted to make sure I'm seeing them all, I could also pick an event type, pick a type, and say I only want to look at land records. And now I would only be seeing. Sorry, I need to scroll so you see it. I would only be seeing land records. So I can use the filters on the way by. I try to always remember to reset things if I don't have them set to the whole table. So now I'm going to go into the land system, and the next thing I haven't picked what next land thing I'm going to do, but let's go back to the person record and go over to locations in the. When I click on North Carolina Mecklenburg, I'm going to be in a place in the locality links table. This looks a little like the contacts table. It contains a set of links that take me to places. I want to work on land records, so I'm going to click that link. And I'm now in my localities table looking at information about North Carolina, Mecklenburg County land records. This still looks very complicated. So let me tell you, I'm going to go to just North Carolina guides and talk for a minute. When I first start working on a state, all I do until I'm ready to work on it is I go find a locality guide, such as the one I always pick is the WikiTree, the Family Search Research Wiki page for that state, and I drop the URL here. Now I can always get to it. And if I'm interested in a particular record type, there may be state level guides, locality guides. I'll add those. Along the way, though, I'm going to find that there are what I call source information pages too. And when I start working on land records in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County, for example, I start adding the source records. And I generally get those from the locality guides. So here's a way I can see all the available guides for the whole state. And this list of views, which I keep in alphabetical order, is actually kind of a table of contents that lets me see what there is to see in that state. Let me go back to North Carolina and Mecklenburg. So you see that I have locality guides at the US level, at the state level, and I have source guides at the state level and at the Mecklenburg County level. And I'll just show you one such source information record. I'm going to scroll across here to the link. The source guide, to me, what I mean by it is it's a point of entry for doing actual searches. So I went and found this, and once I've found it, I have it. And this is a list, 11 very, very long pages of links to the available online filmed records of all of the deeds in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. So this is how I find the indexes and the individual records that I need for the place and the people that I'm looking for. But here's another field in the Mecklenburg County Land Records and Index record in the localities table. And I use this notes details field this way here. I have a plan to search for, I'm intensively looking for 3 families here. So I'm going to really be doing this a lot. That's why you see there's already development in Mecklenburg County land. I'm going to look eventually for all the Robesons, all the McClearys, all the McCoys that might be related to my family in this county. The plan is I want to first search the grantor and grantee indexes through 1840, because that's where most of the action is going to be for my folks. And so there's a grantor index for A to Z. I haven't done anything about McCleary and McCoy yet. But when I entered the grantor index for Robeson, I saved the link. So I can actually get back to, anytime I want, to I think I accidentally linked to the last page of Robeson's rather than the first. No, this is right. This is the first page. I fixed it. So this is the index. There's an entry for Alexander. I'll get it big enough so I can see it. I might allow you to see it. So Alexander Robeson in 1762 has a deed in book 1, page 3. He was the grantor to John Bowell. So I found my way to the index. Since I'm going to use it over and over again, I have kept that information here. But the other thing that I've kept here is that I've already looked for all the entries through 1840 for Michael Robeson. I didn't find any. That makes sense. He lived 1802 to 1853. And this is the grantor index. So this would be him selling property, or his estate selling property, not buying it, not acquiring it. Oh, sorry, this was the grantee. Oh, this was grantor up here, my mistake. So I'm down here now. Yeah, this was grantor, and there weren't any in Michael's. But down in the grantee index, I found 3 records for Michael, and I have captured them. What does that mean? Well, I have a record that's of type record in the locality area. And there I've captured 3 records that are about Michael Robeson. Initially, I just put the book and page number and the link. Well, no, not the link, the book and page number. And later, if I go back to research them, I do the search again through the deeds for the county, find the right book, find the right page, keep the link to it. I might or might not go to the trouble of building a source citation while I'm still working here. Eventually, I decide that this record is relevant to somebody in my actual research. So I incorporate it. I carry it over to the timeline for that person. And that's what I did yesterday. I had done all the research for this 1832. I brought it over here. It's now here, the reference citation's here. And I've put it on in Ancestry and Family Search and Wikitree for his profile. So that's a quick version of how the land system works. It may look hard to use because of the complexity of this, but it doesn't feel hard to use when I'm doing it because I just add one thing at a time when that's what I'm doing now. And I just remember to save it here. And before I'm done, I have not only, notice everything is in the right context. I even have templates available here. I arrange things so that I can see model templates for land records from here and paste them in while I'm preparing a land record. So I try to put everything here that's relevant to the context of working on land records here. And I work back and forth within this table and use the links to get to the places to find the next level information. And I try to remember to record it here too. And I find that that's very helpful. The one other thing I might do if I'm really trying to do, if I'm into what I think of as deeper records, not just census, not ancestry available type records necessarily, but in land records and tax records and stuff. I may be in correspondence with folks and I might ask, you know, can you help, or are you interested in what I find? So let me go do that. I'm going to go back to the persons table and I'm going to look in the record for Michael McCleary Robeson to see if I have any contacts that are relevant to him. And I do, and that's Julie August. And I'm going to go to her correspondence, our correspondence, and I already showed you the process, but very quickly again, today I'm going to create a message. And in this case, what I would, hello, click on the right button. It's going to be from me. It's going to be by email. I wouldn't kill anything if I forgot that. I'm not going to need a reply to it. I'm going to build a message here. Hey, do you have any land records? I won't make you watch the whole thing. Do you have any land records for the Robesons in Mecklenburg County? I know you were looking at some of that, and I'm working on that right now. If you're interested, I'll send it to you. Let me know, and I'll copy that and go to her contact record and click on her email address and paste the text in and give it a subject and send the message. So I'm trying to show flow, connectivity, as well as everything has a place. The places are usually appropriate to establish work contexts in which I can work on different aspects of the research. And I think Airtable gives me, and hopefully you, great power in managing the process of doing the research. That's what it's about. So I've tried to show you ancestry and how to use it to support specific activities. I've given you a tour. I hope you'll give it a try. I remind you of the all-important rule 1, baby steps. I've shown you a lot, I know, but the last 30 minutes were about motivating you and making clear to you how relevant it can be to managing genealogical research. So I think it was worth showing you complexity, and as a reminder, all of that complexity came from the genealogy not from Airtable. In closing, I put a lot of information in the handout, and here's a link to it. You may have picked it up already. You're welcome to email me either with questions that don't fit in the question and answer session we're going to have now, or because you'd like to be put on a mailing list. I probably will, when I'm satisfied with how the localities part of the system is working, I'll probably document that. When I probably will eventually create a downloadable template, Airtable template that does all of this my way. But again, you want to do it your way. Don't naively follow the way somebody else is doing it. And I'll give you a caveat in that regard. The handout sends you to Nicole Dyer's work on family locket and her work on DNA. Her work in general is excellent. I discovered Airtable as part of the process of taking a course they offered called Research Like a Pro with DNA, which is an excellent course. And her work using Airtable is excellent. The one caveat I have is the way she's done DNA is very good. And the way she's done the rest of the stuff, she tries to incorporate various aspects of what I've shown you here, but she's done it in a way that I think is more useful to the professional genealogist and less useful to the family genealogist. Because a professional genealogist works, it's not because she's more expert, she is, but that ain't the point. The professional genealogist tends to work on a large number of independent projects. And so in her context, it makes sense to have things like localities and timelines and research logs and all those things in a base that's devoted to a single project. That's actually probably even a legal requirement with her customers, but the family historian generally, I think, has one or two main databases, mine and my wife's in my case, and wants to do many projects that work in the context of that one single database without having to repeat cousins and DNA and timelines and everything over and over again for different projects. So there are aspects of my design that are probably more useful to the family genealogist. And you should make sure that whatever you do, if you wind up using Airtable, you do it the way that works for you.